all evangelicals don't believe in the Holocaust.
Pretty
That's
much.
what I heard right there.
Awfully broad brush he's painting with there. The tweet or the meme, which in this week is in the form of a tweet that we were sent to destroy this week, is from a Twitter user by the name of Julia Claire. Not sure if that's her real name, but like we said, 2 first names, don't trust her. This is what
David Davidson. That's my name. Don't worry about it.
This is what Julia had to say, and we're just going to destroy it real quick and keep it moving. So she says, quote, "It's insane to me that homeschooling is an accepted practice in this country. Real teachers have to go through years of training and state certification, but an evangelical mom with a BA in marketing who, quote, isn't sure about the Holocaust can be like, quote, no, I should be the teacher," end quote. So, as I said in the pre-show, of all of the things going wrong in the world right now, Julia Claire is most concerned that parents take enough of an interest in their child's education that they're willing to homeschool them.
So what I heard is all evangelicals don't believe in the Holocaust.
Pretty
That's
much.
what I heard right there.
Awfully broad brush he's painting with there.
And then you say that all teachers that aren't in public schools are fake teachers. It's like, did you ever ask any of your private school teachers if they were real? Did you ever reach out and touch them to make sure they weren't figments of your imagination, that all 30 students in that classroom weren't just imagining the same person?
I'm pretty sure that they all were.
Teaching, reading, writing, arithmetic. Oh my God. The real teachers that passed their classes out of one bloodshot eye after a bender the night before, they can teach your 2-year-olds that sexuality is just a fucking social construct and it doesn't actually exist.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, when Dave and I saw us, we're like, dude, we could probably make an entire episode out of just responding to this tweet because there's so much asinine, just idiocy packed into just a few characters that you can put on Twitter. The fact that these people would take such issue with a parent taking an active role in their child's education, or thinking that the state has done such a fine job with education site indoctrination up to this point that jumping through their hoops to get their certification to be qualified as a professional teacher is what's going to make the difference between a good educator and a bad educator.
To teach the things that they say that you can teach, to teach the things that they say are right to teach the things that they won't allow you to think otherwise.
Right. And I mean, all of the social science data behind the fact that parents that take a more active interest in their child's education, actually their children typically have better performance outcomes in terms of education. We can throw all that away, right? Because as long as your state indoctrinators are pumping the right indoctrination into the kids, well, that's just the sign and the hallmark of high quality education that's teaching kids how to think critically and for themselves. Not those terrible, evil, no good, very bad parents who just, have the most vested interest in their child having a successful education. They can't possibly do a good job.
You know what this all boils down to? It sounds like they're saying the state has a better idea how to raise your kids than you do.
Which is exactly what some politicians have been saying over the last couple of years, when parents have been going to school boards losing their minds over the bullshit that public schools have been pumping into their kids. I believe what the heck was his name? The guy who ran for governor in Virginia, running for re-election in Virginia. He actually lost re-election due in no small part to saying something to the effect of parents don't have a right to have a say in what their kids' curriculum is. He said something along those lines.
Well,
basically, hand your kids over to us, the state, and we're going to teach them all the values and education that we think is important. You don't get a say in it, parent.
And there's already being legislation passed that makes it almost illegal to protest anything that's being taught to your kids. So again, and that's a broad scope. If you don't believe me, look it up. I didn't quote anything.
It's
so.
not any broader than saying all evangelical moms don't believe in the Holocaust.
Again, if she's not going to make any more of an effort, I don't feel like we should either.
I agree.
So at this point, it's definitely becoming not only a war of words, but a war of ideas and of perspective. And they're trying to push out any differing perspective than they ever have that delineates from itself. Does
Right.
that make sense? Like, they can't handle you not thinking the way that they do, so they immediately eviscerate you, which is what we've always said on this podcast. They can't handle the debate. They can't define a woman, so they're just going to define you as a bigot. And once they've assaulted your character and you're no longer a member of our acceptable society, then we don't have to listen to you anymore. On to the next one.
Right. And I mean, here's the key takeaway. Here's something that David and I would agree with Julia Claire on, probably, is that a large part of the intrinsic value of children is the fact that they are blank slates. They can be, they have all of the maximum potential that a human being could achieve, as long as they're molded and shaped in the right way, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one view of that would be to say, as blank slates that have to get their values from somewhere, it's incumbent upon the parents to take a role in shaping the values of their child. Because again, as I said before, nobody has a more vested interest in their child being successful in this world than the parents themselves. Now, although Julia Claire might agree with the blank slate mentality, her view of it is parents don't have any right to instill the values in their children, and they probably shouldn't be trusted to do so either. So we need these nameless, faceless, essential government bureaucrats who just jumped through the government's hoop to get some useless credential that doesn't convey the ability to actually educate in any way, shape, or form, that they're magically going to have more of an interest in that child's formation, both educationally and from a values perspective, than the parents themselves. And so they have all of the right to indoctrinate your kids more than the parents have a right to educate them. And so, although we might agree on the blank slate mentality, the way that we come to the conclusions that we do, that homeschooling is a valid form of education and it should be encouraged when and where possible because it helps the future of tomorrow be more critical thinking, to have more time to engage in other interests that form them as a whole human being, not just an automaton who can be trained to regurgitate facts and figures on a standardized test. We're going to come to different conclusions about that than people like Julia Claire, but we posit to you, dear listener or viewer, that our way of looking at that situation is the correct way because, again, just look at the educational outcomes in the United States. Despite spending almost more than any other country in the world per capita on students, we have falling educational outcomes. I suggest to you that the 95% of children educated in public schools in America aren't getting the education that Julia Claire thinks they are.
And I'll just, my last point on this is that the first teachers that you ever have are your parents. That's who you learn from the most. That's who you're with the most. You're with your parents a hell of a lot more. Or you should be with your parents a hell of a lot more than you ever are with the teacher. So, and your ideals are established in your home normally. So again, that's the natural order of things. And Julia seems to think that the natural order of things isn't working as well as it should. So it's obviously the government who's done such a bang up job and everything else that they've ever stuck their grubby little testicles. Almost said testicles. Tentacles in, well, they're testicles too, has always turned to shit. So they want to stick their tentacles into your kids' brains now. Good luck.